Welcome to Walking Stories, the California Walks podcast, where we learn from the lived and learned experiences of folks in the community to make our streets safer. Last month, we shared the new community engagement space being created through the partnership of Bike LA, LA Walks, and Willowbrook Inclusion Network at the Willowbrook Rosa Parks station along the LA Metro A and C lines. If you didn't catch that episode, you can click the link in the corner or check the description to listen now.
This month, we've invited Andrew from Trails of California on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook to join us for a conversation about exploring California by bike. I'm your host, Miha Babalai, Co-Executive Director of California Walks.
And I'm Kevin Shin, the other Co-ED of Cal Walks. Andrew, thanks for joining us today on Walking Stories. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what piqued your interest in exploring the outdoors.
All right. Thanks for having me, Miha and Kevin. Well, my name's Andrew. Yeah, I run a YouTube channel for the past 9 years, focused primarily on cycling across Class 1 bike paths all across California. It originally started just in Southern California, but I've expanded it to reach all the way up to the north. And my goal is just to promote and advocate for safe cycling, accessible cycling along primarily bike paths, but not limited to that either. So yeah, I've been doing that, and I definitely have moved forward, and I utilize social media, not just on YouTube. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and I try to post almost every day on those platforms.
Wow, wonderful. Now, were you already a cyclist before you started to document it, or did they kind of come at the same time?
I think like if there was a chart or a line that went up, it definitely started to peak, at the same time that I started recording. But for a few years prior, before I started my YouTube channel, I was definitely a daily commuter cyclist, and I just really kind of fell in love with that for about 2 or 3 years prior to starting, my video productions. And yeah, it goes back even to when I was younger too, just having access to trails, not in California, but elsewhere as well, and just a sense of adventure that I got from my grandparents, really. So cycling's always been part of my DNA. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you said you started with Southern California and have since sort of expanded to the full state. Like, why did you start with Southern California? What was the impetus that kind of led you to start that process?
Yeah, good question. I'd always visit like I mentioned, my grandparents who were based in Orange County. So when I was a kid, I would became very accustomed to traveling up and down the Santa Ana River Trail that goes from Huntington Beach up through Yorba Linda into Chino. And, it actually continues on to Riverside and San Bernardino. So I became very accustomed to and just comfortable riding up and down that trail at like 14 years old. And yeah, just from that point, when I left college, I came back to California, and Orange County was my landing zone. And it was just, I had a bike, so I commuted on my bike everywhere. And I found not just the Santa Ana River Trail, it started expanding. So really, my backyard was Orange County, and then expanding to Los Angeles and San Diego was kind of the first few steps. And then just as life has gone on, I've been moving across the state and discovering more. There's boundless amount of trails and places to explore in this state alone. It's pretty spectacular. Yeah.
And you specifically chose the Class 1 trails for any particular reason, or was it just happenstance that you started with that?
Well, yeah. I think what I really value about the Class 1 trails is that they're not only like, go back to my example of the SART, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles, you can go one way without stopping. They're highways in a lot of ways. And I think of a lot of those trails, including the Los Angeles River trails, San Gabriel River Trail, they're like spines to the communities that connect millions
Mhm.
of people. So I find that really unique and interesting how we have that infrastructure built into our systems, that are
Mhm.
very car centric. But I just think it's cool. And the main word I like to always go back to is accessibility.
Mhm.
People feel most comfortable on class one bike paths, depending on
Right.
whatever your, if you're comfortable riding or not, if you're a beginner rider, advanced rider,
Mhm.
long distance cyclist, or you just want to, get on your beach cruiser and go to the beach. It's that those bikeways and those river trails are just the best.
For sure. And just for the listeners who may not be familiar with the nomenclature, the class one trails are actually shared trails, right? The idea
Mhm.
is that cyclists can use them, but also folks who are running, and they're entirely designed to be off-road and away from major roadways. So they give us a protected, separated space to be able to access as pedestrians and cyclists. And so, you mentioned the LA River Trail. I used to ride that all the time. I'm based down here, kind of, used to be in Long Beach. I'm in kind of the San Pedro area now. But the LA River Trail used to be my stomping grounds. I used to ride all the way up into the city and back.
Hmm.
And actually, the San Gabriel, which is just on the other side of the city of Long Beach, the San Gabriel Trail, I've ridden that all the way up to what is it called? In Whittier,
Good.
Whittier Narrows. I've ridden
Yep.
all the way up to Whittier Narrows and back. And so, like, I totally get where you're coming from in terms of like these river trails are fantastic. And because they are such long stretches of largely completely off-road, completely separated infrastructure, it does
Mhm.
make for such a relaxing riding experience in comparison to a lot of the on-road paths and on-road trails that are also available to all of us out there.
Exactly. Yeah. And another thing I like about them too, it's not just for cyclists. You can also a lot of people walk them. People, bring their kids out there, or you could rollerblade, you could skateboard on these trails too. Quite comfortably because they're pretty good quality paths
Right.
as well. So
Mhm.
as opposed to maybe a street riding, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. See a lot of folks walking their dogs and things like that too.
Yes.
Yeah, which you got to be careful for, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now, why did you choose social media as like a way to document your adventures and you
Hmm.
know, the different types of trails that you're going on, the different locations of trails?
Yeah, good question. I mean, social media is a great tool for
Mhm.
communication. I can reach people that are
Mhm.
not just in California. I can reach people on the
Mhm.
East Coast, or, anybody that has a common interest, right? People even
Mhm.
international. It's the ultimate tool to be able to spread
Mhm.
awareness.
Yes.
I For me, I was always hyper focused on YouTube.
Mhm.
And for a number of years, up until really this year, I started investing more time into
Mhm.
Instagram, TikTok,
Mhm.
Facebook, and there's different audiences to capture all across the different
Yes.
platforms. And
Right.
YouTube's a great tool for showing large projects, and I
Mhm.
really like using Instagram for short clips of me on a trail talking about certain very specific spots,
Mhm.
or just my own personal insights of what I enjoy about you know you name it trail out there. So
Mhm.
it's they're all very unique communication tools.
Yeah, we found out about your channel and you through Instagram, and then I went to YouTube and looked up quite a few of your videos, and I I was like, oh, this is great. I can't believe I've never come across this before because I would watch walking videos like walk Santa Monica or walk different places, walk parts of other countries, before you go visit. And I thought, oh,
Hmm.
how did no one think of doing the biking? And what I
Sure.
love is that you're highlighting, like you said, kind of the backbone trails of a community. You're not focusing on just the like Huntington
Mm.
Beach, boardwalk that's very
Right.
touristy. And, obviously a lot of people would be interested from other parts of California and nationally and internationally to go to those places when they visit. But you're also highlighting the amazing opportunity people have to cycle right in their backyard and see wildlife, see, natural
Hmm.
landscapes.
Hmm.
So that really stood out to me. And I I feel like it's a way that can show people that there's a trail within their neighborhood that they might not know of. Some of your videos, actually, I realized, hey, actually, that's not very far from where I am. I can go to that. You highlight
Hmm.
that they're accessible in the sense that the distance is not as long as people think, right?
Right.
Um, and I think that's great. I mean, there's a lot of trails here in Sacramento that I go on and they're heavily used. And
Hmm.
from your YouTube video, I saw, oh, well, there's a lot of other trails that like I have never even heard of or thought to explore. So that's been really, really great. And I appreciate your work on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised every day too, like new places that I go to. You could travel up and down the 5 freeway, which,
Hmm.
goes, from, the entire state, south to north,
Hmm.
and you'll actually cross over a bunch of like significant bike
Hmm.
trails. Just and you would never even notice it if you're just driving a car going,
Hmm.
80
Right.
miles an hour on the highway. You'll never stop and look at it, even if you travel on the freeways every day of your life.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunities just to kind of show people glimpses of like,
Hmm.
well, if you stop here and you kind of smell the roses, you look at, your area around you a little bit, you'll notice that there's opportunity for you to maybe not have to drive as much, or
Hmm.
maybe switch some commutes up if you feel like that's accessible and feasible to you.
Hmm.
And even if it's just you getting out there and walking, it's like uh, that's kind of my mission, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm glad it was attracted a little bit to you as well when you were watching the
Hmm.
videos. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, well, we hear from a lot of parents, especially that they would let their youth or, even young adults ride, but they don't feel comfortable maybe on a suburban or urban street.
Mm,
And,
right.
you know, having access to a separated trail is amazing for practicing, for, for a lot of
Hmm.
reasons.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I might add that, in my experience too, I feel like not all these bike paths, class one bike
Hmm.
paths, they're not all treated equally either.
Yes.
There's
Right.
some that are really, really like I would
Hmm.
recommend you can go on all the time, but there's other ones that are, well, they don't really lead anywhere, or the
Hmm.
quality of the trail might not be that great. Like, so I
Hmm.
wouldn't recommend you, getting on your rollerblades and going on it. But,
Hmm.
or there's some that are too short, they're not really functional. Maybe some don't have shade, so they're really
Hmm.
exposed.
Yeah.
Some might be unsafe too. I mean, like
Hmm.
if you look at my Instagram, a lot of people comment on, the current like if there's people, kind of shady people
Hmm.
around.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunities to improve the trails.
Hmm.
And they're not all the trails are created equally, and also everybody has their own individual comfort level and experience on
Yes.
these trails too that
Hmm.
needs to be considered. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, going back to a point you mentioned earlier about trying to get people
Hmm.
to drive less and have more opportunities to explore their communities without relying on
Yeah.
a car. Um, the the thing is, in many of your videos, you find yourself actually having to drive to reach the start of some of these trails. And so we
Yes.
know that there are lots of parts of the state where there's this lack of great public transit that is available,
Mm.
especially when people are trying to access the great outdoors. In fact, I was recently in a meeting with folks from LA Metro where we were talking about, hey, like, what are some of the opportunities to actually get people who live in the inland parts
Mm.
of kind of the Southern California region out to the coast where there's a lot of resources and access to
Right.
recreational opportunities, or up to the mountains where there are those recreational opportunities. So
Right.
if you could wave a magic wand to change things,
Mm.
what would you do to improve access to these trails?
Uh, Great question. So yeah, if I could wave a magic wand, that would be amazing to have that power. Um, it would be, gosh, I would love to like just kind of pull it back and restructure how our cities were built in the first place. Everything's so car centric. Just finding some more maybe like ways to improve our class two bike lanes, to improve uh, maybe more class one bike paths within the riverbeds. We're talking about inland communities, maybe uh, infrastructure and for bikes, or not for bikes, for buses, trains, even like if there's ways to improve the train lines out there, and
Right.
then educating people a little more to just be comfortable using those services. Uh, I think that could really revolutionize, the way we get around and lessen maybe the grip on, traveling by car everywhere. Um, yeah, and also like, there's so many other considerations too. If you're going to be creating new infrastructure in inland communities, you want to make sure they're all shaded. You want to make sure uh, people feel comfortable out there.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I lived on the East Coast, actually, one of the things that was always really sort of easily accessible from all the cities were the trails. You could
Mm,
basically, when we lived up in the Boston area, in Medford, the Minuteman Trail was right there. It was a 5-minute bike ride. You hopped right on the
amazing.
trail and you could go 20, you could easily do 20 miles out and back
Mm,
into kind of I wouldn't even call I wouldn't even call it suburbs. It's almost exurbs at that point. Like you got to a point where the houses were far enough apart you weren't seeing like the neighbor's house right away. It
mm,
got, it got pretty like distant pretty quick. And
mm,
that was just outside of the city of Boston. And so having easy access to those trails is so amazing because it also encourages so much good behavior. It encourages you to go and ride for your health, for your
mm,
mental health. It
hmm.
really gives you that opportunity to kind of just get out there and enjoy the outdoors, which is really a struggle these days. Like here back in California, I find myself like if I'm going for a ride, I really have to sort of like psych myself up to do it because I've almost absolutely have to ride some major city streets to be able to get to a trail in the first place. And then once I'm
Yeah.
on the trail, like they're crowded sometimes, and it just
Mm,
becomes a much bigger ordeal for me to access like easily rideable trails, and having
mhm.
public transit or other resources would make that so much nicer and just so much more comfortable, so much more enjoyable for me, but also, for everybody else as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like even in my community up here in the Sacramento metro, like when I want to go access maybe like our large trail here, the American River, it I have to go along a bunch of really kind of unsafe streets, and it is very intimidating. And sometimes going back to before, sometimes I have to throw my bike on the back of my car and drive a mile to a parking lot to start my ride, which is just very inconvenient, and I I don't like that at all. I'd much rather
Yeah.
just have access in other ways.
Hmm. Yeah, those kind of inconveniences keep people from riding. I have two toddlers and we put them in the trailer, behind my
Mm,
husband's bike. But I mean, that's a whole, ordeal because we got to get the bikes in the
Yeah.
car and the trailer and the snacks because if we're going to go out, we're going to
yeah.
stay out because we went through all the trouble. And
Hmm.
sometimes we do venture out when, in the middle of the day or sometime when we know there isn't a lot of commute traffic just to explore because we want to see, okay, can we find a safer, a more pleasant connection to the trail so that
Hmm.
we can avoid the car. But I'm in this, this California walks, we walk and bike, regularly, a lot of the staff, and we know a lot about the development of the built environment. And if that's cumbersome to someone like, me, you, and Kevin, I can imagine how
Right.
cumbersome it is for, for someone that's maybe getting on the bike for the first time
Hmm.
or
Right.
wants to explore their neighborhood, but would like to see the trail, but not if they're going to have to cross, a major thoroughfare. At the same time, I'm in Citrus Heights, and the city is working on connecting parts of their trails to other neighboring city trails,
Yep.
which I give them, great kudos for. It's taking way
Hmm.
longer than I think they planned, but they are working on that. Um,
Right.
and I'm thinking like, well, with those updates, we'll need education to tell
Yep.
people, oh, the connection is there. Here's how you get there.
Hmm.
Here's what you're going to experience until you get to the trail, and really encourage folks to do that. So really we're going from like a system that was not made for biking. We talk a lot about that in our work as the systems changes. Like we really would
Right.
need a magic wand.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
making
Like,
incremental changes here and there and
mhm.
hoping that the system works together and is as safe as possible. Because we don't have any other option at this point, we've built out our neighborhoods.
Yep.
And, at the same time, there's many people that are willing to work within what they have to experience the outdoors and get outside. And that's really great. Um,
Right.
Absolutely. And in my experience, there are, you mentioned Citrus Heights, and I'm
mhm,
familiar with Citrus Heights, and they have done a lot of improvements
mhm,
recently. That's great. There's other communities though that are in California at least that I think are
mhm,
shining examples, like cities like referencing back to Southern California, like Irvine.
mhm,
Is if you lived anywhere in Irvine, I really feel like you can quite comfortably even get on a class two bike lane and feel
mhm,
pretty safe because they're designed in ways that are they're
mhm,
very open. They give you enough space. They don't give you the
mhm,
minimum standard of space. And oftentimes you could ride with two people side by side on a street and feel comfortable. And then there's also an incredible amount of access to bike trails that cut through east, west,
mhm,
north, and south of the city. And other communities in like Los Angeles, like Santa Clarita, do a really good job with
mhm,
their river trails.
Yeah,
And even if you live in the Bay Area, I know Oakland's working really hard to adapt a lot of their streets. San Francisco, if you live in the city of San Francisco,
mhm.
you're going to be pretty happy. And yeah, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of good examples across the state. And then there's some that you know, not all cities are treated equally, either.
for sure.
Keep
Yes.
coming back
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. I mean, you also mentioned, right, like if you were to do anything, one of the big things would have to be kind of reshaping our communities as a whole, right?
Mhm,
Our neighborhoods and how they're laid out.
Mm,
Davis is always held up as this kind of
mhm,
shining
yes.
example of
Yep.
when people are thoughtful and actually take all those things into consideration.
Yep.
I was recently introduced to the series of like connected paths that are
mhm,
behind the homes, that are kind of in
mhm,
between the homes throughout
Hmm.
the neighborhoods of Davis.
Yep.
And like those, I wish I could see more of those all
mhm,
over the place. The only other place I've actually seen that was in Santa Clarita.
mhm,
Mm,
There's a series of neighborhoods
mhm,
that were built in such a way where in between the streets and the homes, there were these
mhm,
off-road paths that are specifically
yep.
intended for people to actually make use of it. They're covered with, they're covered with tree coverage and
Hmm.
shade, and it makes it a really comfortable environment for people to actually be able to enjoy, even in a place like Santa Clarita, which we know is a little bit inland, tends to get really hot in the
mhm,
summers, but even
Hmm.
with the summer heat, because the shade cover is there, it creates a nice little microclimate that's really
Hmm.
comfortable.
mhm,
Absolutely. That and those little things are essential. It's like I love when you go around to these trails, I always like clock like, hey, is there water access? Are there
mhm,
parks close by for families? And
mhm.
is there shade and coverage? Can I
Yes.
return home on a train if I wanted to go
Mhm,
one way?
Right.
Is there at minimum like society close by so I can go to a convenience store to pick up
mhm,
a protein bar and a Gatorade,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah. So now you've explored trails all over the state. Do you know how much of what's available you've covered? And is there a favorite trail that you have?
So your question is what's available, like how many trails
Um,
do you think I've been on personally?
well, do you know how many class one bike trails there are in California, and then how much of what percentage of those do you think you've covered so far?
I'd have to look up the total statistics
Mhm.
of how many there are.
Mhm.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Mhm.
And I know I have a lot more to discover. Maybe I've covered half of them. For me
Mhm.
personally, I don't know. I probably haven't put that much media out, but
Mhm.
there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds
Yeah.
of miles of class one bike
Mhm.
trails just in like areas like Southern California. And then,
Yes.
Right.
Northern California has all the way up from the Bay Area to Eureka also has a
Mhm.
lot of great
Yes.
examples. Even I was in Redding a couple weeks ago, and the Sacramento River Trail in Redding is incredible. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, there's a lot more to be discovered. I feel like I could spend a whole lifetime trying to ride around the state and not get
Mhm.
bored.
Yeah. Now
For
you
sure.
mentioned some of the amenities that you look for. Um, is there a trail that you feel like has a really good amount of them or is like an ideal if someone was gonna, go out there and explore, some trails across the state, which ones would you recommend they maybe start with?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question. I have to think about that one a little bit. I mean, my I always go back to the Santa Ana River,
Hmm.
and because it just goes through a lot of very connected communities.
Hmm.
It takes you to the coast, takes you to the mountains. It's,
Hmm.
as of 2026, a fairly safe trail to ride on. Um, and they have a lot of those amenities, even
Hmm.
all the way down to bike repair stations on that trail, where,
Hmm.
Oh,
you need to
nice.
fix a flat
Yeah.
tire. They have tools available,
Hmm.
uh, you know, like public resources there next to like water fountains. So I always feel very comfortable riding on that
Hmm.
trail. And I always go back to that one.
Would
I
you say that that is your favorite trail as well, or would you say that you have another trail that you think is like your favorite of all time so far?
I mean, I went up, like I mentioned before, I went up and visited the Sacramento River Trail
Mhm.
in Redding, and it was really, really spectacular.
Mhm.
The only thing I'd say about that is sometimes you get down into rural areas and you're kind of alone.
Mhm.
So
Sure. Yeah.
it's, yeah, I always like having the endpoint of a trail to connect to a different city
Mhm.
or, somewhere. But,
Mhm.
some of those rural Northern California trails kind of lead to nowhere. Uh, in a lot of cases.
Mhm.
Right.
Now, in your videos, it seems like you're writing alone. Do you ever go with a group? Are there, do you take groups out, or is it just mostly a solo project?
It's primarily a solo
Mhm.
project. I've always
Mhm.
thought about, expanding and bringing people
Mhm.
along.
Mhm.
If that's something people are interested in doing with me, I mean, reach out to me and I'll,
Mhm.
I'll definitely entertain that.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, the having maybe interviews and talking to
Mhm.
people as I ride, it's, just I love to geek out about trails and talk
Mhm.
about, what's available, what's your favorite trail, all those
Mhm.
questions. It's like it's great. I could be happy to talk to people more about that and maybe show people and have more connections that way. That'd be
Mhm.
great.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, this could be a potential opportunity for us to partner and explore like getting people together
Mhm.
to share in some of these experiences. So maybe something for us
absolutely.
to talk, to talk more about offline.
I'm all
So,
ears.
great. So
Hmm.
in all of your experiences so far, like what would you say has been your least favorite encounter with other trail users?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. I mean, kind of a issue that's kind of going on right now is, and I experienced it a couple weeks ago when I was riding on the San Gabriel River trails. A lot of people are kind of like using illegal like mopeds and
Mhm.
bikes on our trails that, you
Yeah.
know, I experienced it multiple times over the course of a day or two down there, where people are riding so fast on these trails on these almost
Mhm.
like, a step down from an actual car,
Mhm.
to the point where it almost made me feel unsafe, and I'm pretty comfortable out there. That would, if I was anybody else, that would completely take me off that trail, and I wouldn't go back again. So it's like those. that was kind of a recent negative experience, and I've seen a lot of people on my Instagram videos talk about that too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't know if better policing or better,
Mhm.
enforcement of the rules needs to take place, or a lot of that would probably come down to funding, but there's something
Mhm.
there that needs to be kind of fixed. Um,
And
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think the issue of these e-motos that are really not e-bikes. They're more, they're basically off-road motorcycles
yeah,
that are electric. The issue with these e-motos has really been that I think a lot of people just don't know the difference. So I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of education that still needs to
Mhm.
happen.
hmm
And
yep,
frankly, we as a society do a terrible job these days of educating our kids on like what
Yeah.
are the proper rules of the road, because you know
mm,
most kids aren't paying attention in even when they're driving around with their parents anymore. Their face is buried in the cell phone, so
sure,
they're not really
Mhm.
learning through osmosis like some of us did when we were
mm,
younger. And at the same time, there just really isn't a structured approach to this until you get to the age when you're supposed to be learning to drive
Mhm.
and taking driver education
Mhm.
classes, which most schools don't offer anymore within the
mm,
school system. And so we've just reached this point where there really isn't a structured approach to teaching kids about roadway safety anymore. And
Mhm.
so, if nothing else, like if we can make an adjustment societally to correct for that oversight, I think that would actually
sure,
help a lot of these kids who are riding around on devices that really are not appropriate for them in the first place.
mm,
I think it would do wonders for getting a lot of the parents to crack down themselves, but also for the
Mhm.
kids to realize, oh, yeah, this is probably not great.
right, yeah, exactly. Like maybe, yeah, maybe it's as simple as putting it into a curriculum somewhere,
Mhm.
uh, and improving that education. That would make a difference.
Right.
There does seem to be well, I don't want to call it a contradiction, but kind of a contradiction, from what I've heard parents say in my safe routes to school work that, oh, they don't feel comfortable letting their child on a bike. But then,
Mm,
at least in my city and in my neighborhood, especially, the amount of kids like 5 and up, and especially youth on e-bikes, e-scooters, the motorbikes is, I mean, they go around in like 15 to 20 groups. So
mm.
when I see them, I'm so excited. Wow, look, kids on bikes, but they're all on electric, so they're all electric. And
Yeah.
I think that parents don't know the dangers of them. I don't know how that, because personally, I don't understand how that makes the parents feel more safe, but it does somehow because they are buying them and letting their children go out in groups and alone on these vehicles that go, much faster than a bike. Um, and then the
Right.
cities, I think there's nobody really involved in my city in even just enforcing that, like, hey, you have a vehicle here, you don't have a bike, so you can't be riding, you know, the same space as this other kid that has an e-scooter, that's going way slower. The
hmm
kids also don't know where they belong because
Right.
they sometimes go on the sidewalk. At least where I live, the streets connect to trails that are paved and unpaved, so they can do
Mm,
like kind of like BMX jumps with them.
right.
And so these devices are becoming like just very multi-use. Like, what are they? Are they for entertainment? Should the kids be doing wheelies and jumping off of ramps with them, or should they be riding them to school? There's just a huge chunk of education missing, and I feel like everything changed so quickly that we
Yes.
didn't get a chance to catch up. 10
Yes.
years ago, we were encouraging kids, get on bikes, get on bikes. Here's a
Mm.
helmet, here's bike rodeos. And then all of a sudden, here's 10 types of bikes you can have. Okay, go out there and enjoy your bike.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
And to
mhm,
if you don't mind, to piggyback on that,
yeah.
on the other end of the spectrum, I do advocate for the
Mhm,
use of e-bikes
mhm,
in a way where again, going back, like
Mhm.
for people that need them, like,
Yeah.
it's an accessibility thing. I
Mhm.
do like
Yeah.
to know that
Mhm.
sometimes when maybe somebody that doesn't have the fitness level,
Mhm.
or maybe older
Mhm.
people, riders that maybe thought, oh, my cycling career is behind me. They pick up an e-bike and
Mhm.
they go, wow, you know what? I feel comfortable actually going 10, 20
Mhm.
miles away from my home.
Mhm.
Um, and being able to return, that's actually really great for people that need it. It's just sometimes the people who want to do it the incorrect way ruin it for the people
Mhm.
that really do need
Yeah.
it,
Right. For
so
sure.
yeah.
So for me, it's been an
So,
opportunity to celebrate when I see a kid on an actual bike.
Yes, and that too. It's
You know,
great.
it's like I
yeah.
kind of want to
Yeah.
like get a bag of goodies or something and just hand it to them, like, good job, you know. Every once in a
Yeah.
while, there'll be like a few kids that are on regular bikes and everybody else is on an e-bike, and I'm like, good job. You just took care of all your fitness for the day.
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Keep it
mean, I just want to be
all
clear, like we're not
Mhm.
against, we're certainly
Yeah.
not against the use of e-bikes, but
Mhm.
the important thing is to use them responsibly,
Yes.
right? Like that's really the
exactly.
key is people being responsible with it makes it so much better for everybody else as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I want to
Um,
flip this on its head because I
mhm.
want to end on a positive note.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite experience or favorite encounter with other trail users?
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, my favorite experience, or I guess something that I always like come back to, that's always like, it's nice when it happens. Um, a lot of times, like even sometimes when I'm just on the trail setting up cameras, or
Mhm.
whatever the case might be, I have my bike, on the side of the trail. It kind of looks like I'm in trouble or I need help.
Mhm.
Sometimes you might have a flat tire or something like that. I always feel that, when you're out on your bike, there's like a certain level of community that
Mhm.
kind of takes place. And almost, I'd say 90% of the time, I always have somebody ride by me and they're like, hey, you need some help, and they'll stop, and either they stop or they'll just check in. And I always appreciate
Mhm.
that element of kind of being out there on a trail, especially in maybe rural areas of people,
Right.
they see something and they want to act on it, they want to help. Like, you don't always get that maybe in like society, but like
Mhm.
Very
there's
true.
something about being on a bike trail that kind of like, I think, maybe bonds people a little more,
Mhm.
and it makes people kind of, you know, common shared
Mhm.
experience. Like, if you're in trouble, I want to help you out,
Mhm.
or just checking in. Just
Yeah.
I think we miss a lot of that in our day-to-day lives. So that's something I always enjoy. And sometimes it's as simple as me. I'm just setting up my camera and I'm like, I'm fine, don't worry. You can carry on. No issue here, but thanks for checking in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
That missing sense of community, right? I think we've
Mhm.
all become very
yeah.
isolated in some ways. And so having
Mm,
that sense of community when you're just
Mhm.
with a bunch of people and you don't
hmm.
even know each other, but they're checking in on you,
Mhm.
makes you
Yeah.
feel that sense of community a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what cycling's all about for me out there. That's why you want to do it.
Mhm.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us about your exploration of trails across the state. You
Yeah.
can find Andrew on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just look up Trails of California and you'll find him. Make sure to check out his videos. I found them entertaining, informative, and really inspiring. You might just find yourself planning your next trail adventure after watching a few.
Yeah, thanks again, Andrew. We really appreciate you being here today and look forward to continuing to engage and hopefully our audience finds some inspiration from your videos, like Miha said.
Mhm.
Well, and that's it for this episode of Walking Stories. We'll be back next month with more walking and biking related experiences from folks across the state. Don't forget to support Walking Stories and California Walks with your tax deductible donation. Just visit calwalks.org/donate to make your contribution and support us by purchasing CalWalks merch at calwalks.org/merch store, where you can get a t-shirt like the one that I'm wearing. Also, make sure you sign up for our newsletter on our website to stay in the know.
And as always, a special thank you to the California Endowment for their support in making this podcast possible.
Thanks for listening today to Walking Stories. We have many more stories to bring to you, so make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be reminded when our new episodes drop. Take the opportunity this summer to explore a trail and share in the comments below where you went and your favorite thing about it. And thanks again, Andrew, for joining us.
Thank you, guys.